My name is Clara Hayes. I'm 29 years old, and my life, as I knew it, fractured last Saturday evening under the warm glow of fairy lights in my grandmother's garden. It happened at our annual summer solstice party, a tradition as old as my memory. My grandmother, Eleanor, the unshakable matriarch of our family, stood up, her wine glass catching the twilight. She raised it high, a benevolent smile on her face, and declared to the assembled family, a toast to Clara. Your car loan is officially paid off. $15,000 is no small thing, but you've earned it, my dear. I remember the fork halfway to my mouth, laden with a piece of grilled salmon. I froze. Grandma, I said, my voice a confused murmur, I don't have a car loan. I don't even have a car. A profound silence descended upon the long cedar table. In that hushed moment, my younger sister, Sophie, breezed through the garden gate, a vision in a sundress, her laughter echoing in the sudden quiet. Dangling from her slender fingers was a set of keys, the silver logo of a car dealership glinting in the dimming light. This is the story of how my family's quiet deceptions led to a truth so staggering it forced me to rebuild my life, not on the foundation of their approval, but on the bedrock of my own self-respect. To understand the weight of that moment, you need to understand my world. For the past 7 years, I've been a librarian at the Cedar Ridge Public Library. It's not a glamorous job, but it's one I love. I find a quiet satisfaction in the hushed aisles, in connecting a child with their first magical story, or helping a student find the right research materials. Cedar Ridge is a small city nestled in the Pacific Northwest, a place of misty mornings, towering pine trees, and a sense of community that can be both comforting and suffocating. My salary is modest, and the shadow of my master's degree student loans, a formidable $55,000, has loomed over my entire adult life. Every month, I would make my payment, a small act of chipping away at a mountain, feeling the slow, almost imperceptible progress. My grandmother, Eleanor, is the heart of our family, a force of nature even at 81. She lives in the sprawling, cedar-shingled house my grandfather built, a home with wide porches that overlook the Puget Sound. After my grandfather passed away 15 years ago, a generous life insurance policy and the income from 2 small rental properties left her comfortably well off, at least by Cedar Ridge standards. She was the family's benefactor, her generosity a powerful tool she wielded with love, but also with a precision that created its own kind of imbalance. Then there is Sophie. At 26, she is the family's sunbeam. While I am quiet and introspective, Sophie is radiant and outgoing, a public relations specialist for a boutique marketing firm downtown. She was always the golden child, the one who captured everyone's attention, especially Grandma's. Where I am practical, Sophie is spontaneous. She graduated with a degree in communications and almost no debt, as Grandma had cheerfully covered most of her tuition. When I'd broached the subject of similar help for my library science degree, Grandma had patted my hand and said, "Oh, Clara, you're so capable and sensible. You'll find a way." And I did. Through scholarships, part-time jobs, and the aforementioned mountain of loans. This dynamic was woven into the fabric of our childhood. Sophie got the expensive piano lessons. I got a gift certificate to the art supply store. For her high school graduation, she received a trip to Europe. I received a handsome set of leather-bound classics and a savings bond. My parents, bless their hearts, did their best to be fair, but their resources were limited. Grandma's selective support created a current that they couldn't swim against. The car situation made the disparity painfully clear. For the past 4 years, I'd been driving a beat-up 2008 Subaru I'd lovingly nicknamed the Blueberry. It had over 200,000 miles and a host of chronic ailments. Last month, the transmission finally died. The mechanic quoted a repair cost that was more than the car's value. Since then, I'd been navigating Cedar Ridge's unreliable bus system, a 2-transfer journey that added nearly 2 hours to my workday. I was painstakingly saving every spare dollar for a down payment on a reliable used car, a goal that felt impossibly distant. No one in the family had offered to help, though they all knew of my predicament. The annual summer solstice party at Grandma's is a cherished tradition. The whole clan attends, my parents, David and Susan, my Aunt Carol and Uncle Mike with my cousin Maya, Grandma's longtime companion, a gentle retired professor named Arthur, and a host of family friends. Held in late June, when the garden is a riot of rhododendrons and hydrangeas, it's a day of lawn croquet, too much food, and the low hum of family politics. This year's party began as they always did. Mom was fussing over her famous 7-layer dip. Dad and Uncle Mike were engaged in their perennial debate over the merits of gas versus charcoal grilling. I'd arrived early, straight from the library, hoping my quiet diligence would be seen. I helped hang lanterns, arranged chairs on the lawn, and refilled pitchers of iced tea, the exhaustion of my long week a dull ache behind my eyes. When Grandma asked how I was managing without a car, I kept my tone light. "It's an adventure," I said with a small smile. "The bus lets me get a lot of reading done. I should have enough saved for a down payment by the end of the summer." She nodded, a thoughtful look on her face, but said nothing more. The familiar sting of disappointment was brief. I was used to it. As dusk began to settle, casting a golden-pink glow over the water, we all gathered around the long outdoor table. The air smelled of grilled salmon, damp earth, and salty sea breezes. Fireflies started to blink in the twilight, and the lanterns I'd hung cast a warm, intimate light over our faces. For a moment, despite everything, a feeling of hope bloomed in my chest. Maybe today, my quiet perseverance would finally be acknowledged. Little did I know, the moment of acknowledgement was coming, but it would be a twisted, unrecognizable version of my hopes, one that would shatter the very foundations of the family I thought I knew. Dinner was winding down when Grandma Eleanor stood, clinking her fork against her wine glass. This was her custom, a moment for a toast or an announcement. I was savoring a bite of berry cobbler when she cleared her throat, her voice carrying with its usual authority. "I have something wonderful to share with you all tonight," she began. The low murmur of conversations faded as all eyes turned to her. She had a way of commanding a room, a quiet power that everyone respected. She smiled, her gaze finding mine across the long table. "A toast to Clara. Your car loan is officially paid off. $15,000 is no small thing, but you've earned it, my dear." The cobbler turned to ash in my mouth. I set my spoon down, my mind struggling to catch up. A wave of confused but happy applause rippled around the table. My mother's eyes were glistening with happy tears. "I'm sorry, what?" I managed, my voice thin and strange. Grandma beamed, clearly pleased with her grand gesture. "You don't have to worry about that car loan anymore, sweetheart. I went to the bank this morning and paid the whole thing off. Cascade Valley Bank, wasn't it? The man said it was for a lovely new model." A hot flush crept up my neck as 20 pairs of eyes swiveled to me, all filled with cheerful expectation. My brain was a frantic scramble of denials. A joke? Had she confused me with someone else? "Grandma," I said, my voice louder now, with a slight tremble I couldn't control. "I don't have a car loan. I don't even have a car." The silence that followed was absolute. Forks froze in midair. My father coughed, a sharp, awkward sound. Grandma's triumphant smile wavered, replaced by a deep frown of confusion. "Of course you do, dear," she insisted. "The forest green one. The dealership sent me the paperwork last week." Just then, the garden gate creaked open and Sophie arrived. She was perfectly put together, as always, her hair catching the lantern light, designer sunglasses perched on her head despite the twilight. "Sorry I'm late, everyone," she called out, her voice bright and carefree. "Had to take the scenic route in my new baby." From her fingers, a set of keys with a prominent Subaru dealership tag swung like a pendulum. The timing was so cruelly perfect it felt scripted. Every head at the table turned from me, to Sophie, and back to me. Understanding dawned on face after face, a slow, horrified wave. Aunt Carol's hand flew to her mouth. My cousin Maya, a lawyer, just stared, her expression hardening. Grandma was frozen, her wine glass still held aloft, her eyes darting between Sophie and me. For the first time in my life, she looked utterly lost for words. Sophie, initially oblivious, finally registered the thick, suffocating tension. Her smile faltered. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice losing its confidence. I couldn't speak. My throat felt tight and raw, choked with a potent cocktail of humiliation and a dawning, sickening sense of betrayal. I sat rigid in my chair, my hands clenched into fists in my lap, fighting the primal urge to run. It was my father who broke the spell. "Sophie," he said, his voice low and strained. "Did you just buy a new car?" "Yes." Her enthusiasm returned, a brittle, fragile thing. A 2024 Subaru Forester. Forest green, fully loaded. I just picked it up yesterday. She dangled the keys again. "It's parked out front. Wanna see?" "And how did you pay for this car?" my mother asked, her voice eerily calm. Sophie's smile flickered. "Well, Grandma gave me a huge help with the down payment, and I got a fantastic loan. The bank said I had amazing credit." Each word was a fresh stab of pain. I finally found my voice, a ragged whisper. "I need some air." I stood so quickly my chair scraped loudly against the flagstones, nearly tipping over. Without looking at anyone, I walked away from the table, past the beautiful garden and the twinkling lights, into the deep shadows of the yard. Behind me, the dam broke. I could hear the eruption of voices, my mother's rising in a crescendo of questions, my father's deeper tones demanding an explanation, Sophie's confused, high-pitched protests, and cutting through it all, Grandma's sharp command for order. I found my way to an old maple tree at the edge of the property and leaned against its rough bark, gasping for breath. My hands were shaking. How could my name be on a loan I knew nothing about? And why had Grandma paid it off, framing it as a gift to me? After what felt like an eternity, I heard footsteps on the grass. I turned, half expecting Sophie, armed with some elaborate, tearful excuse. But it was my cousin Maya. "Everyone's in an uproar," she said softly, stopping a few feet away. "I can't go back there," I whispered, hugging myself against a sudden chill. Maya nodded. "I don't blame you." That was a lot. A beat of silence. "Did you have any idea about any of it?" "None," I said, the word tasting like poison. "I thought she was the golden child, not a thief." "Something's very wrong here, Clara," Maya said, her lawyerly brain clearly at work. "Grandma seems genuinely blindsided. And Sophie," she trailed off. "She's crying, saying it's all a big misunderstanding." "But, Clara," she paused, her gaze serious. "You need to check your credit. Now." A cold dread spread through me. "You think she used my name?" "I don't know for sure," Maya said, her voice gentle but firm. "But it's the only thing that makes sense. Family members with similar names, access to personal information, it happens more than you'd think." Eventually, I pulled myself together enough to walk back towards the house. The party was over. The festive air had evaporated, leaving a tense, acrid residue. Small, hushed groups stood on the lawn. Sophie was nowhere in sight. My parents stood by the now empty table, looking 10 years older. Grandma intercepted me before I reached the porch, her face a mask of grim determination. "Clara, we're getting to the bottom of this right now." I nodded numbly, following her inside to the one room that had always been sacrosanct, her study. The real nightmare was about to begin. Grandma Eleanor's study was her fortress. The heavy oak door was always closed, a silent testament to the private world of finances, correspondence, and family history that lay within. As I stepped over the threshold, a strange sense of dissociation washed over me. I felt like a spectator watching a play, not the protagonist whose life was imploding. "Sit," she said, her voice stripped of its usual warmth, pointing to one of the worn leather armchairs that faced her immense, cluttered desk. I sat, my back ramrod straight, and watched her settle into her high-backed chair, donning a pair of silver-rimmed reading glasses. "First," she began, her tone all business, "your phone. Do you have an app for your bank or for credit monitoring?" I nodded, my hands unsteady as I pulled my phone from my purse. I had a credit monitoring app, a service I'd signed up for years ago after a data breach at the hospital where my mother worked. I rarely checked it, relying on the email alerts that were supposed to flag any new activity. But my inbox was clean. No alerts, no warnings. I logged in, my heart pounding a slow, heavy rhythm against my ribs. I navigated to the list of active accounts and my breath caught in my throat. There it was. An auto loan from Cascade Valley Bank. Opened 32 days ago. Original amount, $22,500. A down payment of $7,500, leaving a balance of $15,000. The monthly payment was listed as $348.12 for 48 months. It's here, I whispered, turning the phone so she could see. A car loan. I never applied for it. Grandma's lips pressed into a thin, hard line. How? They would need your signature. Your social security number. They would need my full name, date of birth, address, and social security number, I recited slowly, the horrifying pieces clicking into place. All information Sophie would know. All information she could easily access. A slideshow of memories flashed in my mind, Sophie borrowing my laptop last Christmas, complaining that hers was slow. The week she'd stayed in my apartment after a breakup, with full run of my space, my mail, my desk. The casual way she'd joke about how we could use each other's IDs because our driver's license photos looked so similar. I need to see what else. I trailed off, my thumb swiping frantically through the app. The car loan was just the beginning. 2 new credit cards, both opened in the last 4 months, both hovering near their limits. A personal loan from an online lender for home renovations. A financing plan with a high-end furniture store. In total, nearly $35,000 of debt, all of it in my name. Grandma, I said, my voice finally breaking. I think Sophie has been stealing my identity. Her face was ashen. Without a word, she reached for her desk phone and pressed an intercom button. Susan, send Sophie to the study. Now. Her tone was steel. In the agonizing minutes we waited, I kept digging. I logged into my full credit report and saw my score, once a source of quiet pride, had plummeted by over 120 points from the high balances and flurry of new inquiries. I checked the trash folder of my email account and found them, dozens of deleted emails. Account confirmations. E-statements. Overdue notices. Sophie had been in my email, too, methodically covering her tracks. The study door opened and Sophie entered. Her eyes were red and puffy, but her expression held a stubborn, defensive glint. Sit down, Grandma commanded, pointing to the chair next to mine. Sophie sat, pointedly avoiding my gaze. Explain this, I said, my voice cold and hard. I turned my phone screen towards her, displaying the list of fraudulent accounts. It's not what it looks like, she began, her voice taking on that familiar, wheedling tone she'd used since she was a child to talk her way out of trouble. Really? I shot back, a wave of icy rage giving me a strange clarity. Because it looks exactly like felony identity theft and grand larceny. I was going to pay it all back, she insisted. You have perfect credit, Clara. Mine was a mess after I missed some payments last year. I just needed a fresh start. The car loan was just to get me going. I was going to refinance it in my own name in a few months, and you would have never even known. Never known. I echoed, incredulous. Sophie, there's over $30,000 of debt here. It's not that much in the grand scheme of things, she mumbled, looking down at her perfectly manicured hands. Grandma, who had been watching us with a thunderous silence, finally spoke. Sophie and Hayes, are you telling me that you knowingly and willfully committed fraud against your own sister? Sophie's face crumpled. You don't understand how hard it's been. Clara has it all so easy. The respectable job, the perfect credit, everyone admiring how responsible she is. I just needed a little help. Help. My voice rose, shaking with the force of my disbelief. You call ruining my financial future help? I take the bus to work every day because my car died, while you're driving around in a brand new Subaru that I'm apparently on the hook for. Grandma was paying for it, she cried, as if that absolved her of everything. I spun to face my grandmother. Did you know? When you gave her the $7,000 for the down payment, did you know she was using my name? Grandma looked wounded. Absolutely not. Sophie told me she'd been pre-approved for a loan based on her new promotion at work. I gave her the money as a belated graduation gift to help her get established. She fixed Sophie with a glare that could have melted steel. I had no idea she was establishing herself by committing a federal crime. Sophie dissolved into shuddering sobs. I was going to fix it. My promotion comes with a big raise. I was going to pay everything off. You've made one payment on the car loan, I pointed out coldly. What about the credit cards? The personal loan? Were you making those payments? Her silence was a confession. I stood up, the leather of the chair groaning in protest. I couldn't bear to be near her for another second. I need to go. I need to figure out what to do. Wait, Grandma said. She reached into a deep drawer in her desk and pulled out a thick, worn manila folder. She placed it on the polished wood with a soft thud. There's more. I'm afraid this goes back much further than a few months. As Sophie's eyes widened in horrified recognition of the folder, I knew that the night's terrible revelations were far from over. The manila folder sat on the great oak desk like an unexploded bomb. Grandma Eleanor's hands, usually so steady, rested on it with a slight tremor I'd never seen before. The formidable family matriarch looked, for the first time, fragile. I need you both to understand, she began, her voice soft and heavy with regret. I started looking into things a few months ago. I didn't want to believe what the small inconsistencies were pointing to. I see now that waiting was a grave error. She opened the folder and slid out a stack of bank statements, fanning them across the desk. I recognized the Cascade Valley Bank letterhead. Sophie, this is the savings account I set up for you when you graduated from college. I deposited $25,000 into it as your nest egg. It was the same amount I gave Clara when she finished her master's degree. My head whipped up. What? Grandma, you never gave me any money when I graduated. Eleanor's expression grew grim. That was the first red flag. She slid a document towards me. It was a photocopy of a cashier's check for $25,000, dated 7 years ago. It was made out to Clara Hayes, and on the back was a scrawled signature of endorsement. My signature. Except it wasn't. The C was too looped, the H too sharp. It was a passable forgery, but a forgery nonetheless. I never saw this check, I whispered, staring at the damning evidence. I never signed this. Beside me, Sophie was unnaturally still, her sobs choked off. Grandma continued, her voice gaining a cold, hard edge. When Clara mentioned her struggles with her student loans at Christmas, I was perplexed. The money I'd given her should have paid off nearly half her debt. So I started digging. She produced more papers. Credit card statements in my name I'd never seen, filled with charges for spa days, weekend trips to Portland, and boutique clothing. Withdrawal slips from my own meager savings account, draining it slowly over years. Loan applications I'd never filled out. It seems, Grandma said, her voice laced with ice, that Sophie has been systematically defrauding you for the better part of 7 years. The room began to swim. 7 years. The entire length of my professional career. Every extra shift I'd picked up at the library. Every vacation I'd foregone. Every time I'd chosen the generic brand at the grocery store. All of it, while my own sister was living a lifestyle subsidized by money that was, in one way or another, stolen from me. How much? I asked, my voice a hollow echo in the quiet room. Grandma consulted a neatly handwritten ledger on the top of the pile. By my conservative estimate, including the initial $25,000, the diverted funds, and the fraudulently obtained credit, it's approximately $92,000. The number was a physical blow. It knocked the air from my lungs. $92,000. It would have meant a life free from the crushing weight of debt. It would have meant a down payment on a small condo. It would have meant peace of mind. I turned to Sophie, who was now staring at a spot on the antique Persian rug. Sophie. How? When she finally lifted her head, her eyes were not filled with remorse, but with a shocking, raw resentment. It was always so easy for you, she spat, her voice venomous. St. Clara, with your quiet, important job and your perfect credit score. Everyone's so proud of you. I was just the flighty, fun one. You didn't need the money the way I did. Didn't need it? I repeated, my voice dangerously quiet. I've been living paycheck to paycheck, drowning in debt, while you were on vacation with my money. You never even noticed, she shot back, as if my trust in her was a failing on my part. You were too busy being noble and responsible to even check your own accounts. If Grandma hadn't decided to play detective, you'd still be clueless. That is enough. Eleanor's hand slammed down on the desk, the sharp crack making us both flinch. Sophie, what you have done is not a childish mistake. It is a series of calculated, criminal acts. Identity theft, forgery, wire fraud. These are felonies. You wouldn't press charges, Sophie scoffed, looking at me with a flicker of her old confidence. She's your sister. The most painful part was that she was probably right. Despite the rage and the profound sense of violation, a part of me still saw the little girl who used to follow me everywhere. But that girl was a ghost, replaced by this stranger. I have to go, I said, standing abruptly. The walls of the study felt like they were shrinking, the air thick and unbreathable. I need to think. Eleanor nodded, her eyes filled with a weary understanding. Take these, she said, gathering all the documents and putting them back in the folder. You'll need this evidence to begin the recovery process. As I took the heavy folder, another question surfaced. Grandma, how did you get all of this? Some of these are statements from my private accounts. A faint, tired sigh escaped her. I may have leveraged my long-standing relationships at the bank. I told them I had your power of attorney to investigate potential fraud. It wasn't entirely true, but it was effective. She met my gaze. I am sorry for that invasion of your privacy, Clara, but I had to know the truth. So, the betrayal was layered. My sister's cruel and calculated theft. My grandmother's well-intentioned but unauthorized meddling. My entire family's blind enabling of Sophie for years. I walked out of the study without another word. In the living room, my parents and Maya waited, their faces etched with anxiety. Their conversation died as I emerged, clutching the folder to my chest like a shield. Clara, my mother started, rising from the couch. What's going on? What did Sophie do? How could I possibly explain it? How could I tell them that their sunbeam daughter was a thief, that their family was built on a foundation of lies? Ask Sophie, I managed, my voice flat. Or ask Grandma. I can't. Not right now. I walked out the front door, into the cool night air. The folder on the passenger seat of Maya's car felt radioactive. The ordinary world outside, the streetlights, the passing cars, seemed oblivious and surreal. By the time Maya dropped me at my small apartment, the initial shock had begun to cool, hardening into a quiet, steely resolve. This was no longer just about money. It was about years of being underestimated and undervalued. As I spread the documents across my small kitchen table and began to piece together the full timeline of deceit, I knew one thing with absolute certainty: my life would never be the same. The quiet, accommodating Clara was gone, and I had no idea who was going to take her place. In the hollow hours of the night, sleep was a distant country I couldn't reach. My small apartment, usually a sanctuary of quiet and order, felt like a command center for a war I never knew I was fighting. The kitchen table was covered in papers, Grandma's evidence, my own bank statements, and pages of notes I'd scrawled on a legal pad. The more I organized the timeline, the sicker I felt. Sophie had started small, with a forged nest egg check. Emboldened, she'd moved on to opening credit cards, intercepting my mail to get the physical cards, and even filing a fraudulent tax return 1 year to divert my refund to an account she controlled. The furniture loan coincided with her redecorating her apartment, the personal loan with a trip to Hawaii she'd claimed her work paid for. Around 3 a.m., my phone, which had been blessedly silent, lit up with a barrage of notifications. It was as if the entire family had simultaneously decided to weigh in. Mom, Clara, please call us. We're sick with worry. Dad, your mother is beside herself. Whatever this is, we are a family. We can sort it out. Aunt Carol, just heard. Unbelievable. Call me if you need to talk to someone outside the immediate mess. Uncle Mike, your aunt told me. If you need someone to have a talk with Sophie, just say the word. And then, a message from Grandma: I have retained the services of my financial advisor. He will help us create a path forward. Please come to the house tomorrow at 10 a.m. Bring the folder. And bring Maya. The only person who remained silent was Sophie. I set the phone down, feeling a wave of exhaustion and cynicism. Where was all this urgent concern when I was rationing groceries to make my student loan payments? Their sudden attention felt like damage control, an effort to quickly patch the gaping hole in the family's facade. Still, I found myself typing a reply to Maya. "Me, you up?" Her reply was instantaneous. "Maya, lawyers are nocturnal. Call me." Her voice was a calm anchor in my sea of chaos. "You should be asleep," she said. "So should you." "Fair point," she conceded. "How bad is the paper trail?" I stared at the final number I'd circled on my notepad. 92,000, give or take. And my credit score is in the toilet. A low whistle came down the line. And it was definitely her? Without a doubt. She confessed, Maya. Right in front of me and Grandma. And she wasn't even that sorry. She was angry she got caught. "That tracks, unfortunately," Maya said grimly. "Okay, difficult question time, cuz. Are you going to the police?" The question I'd been pushing to the back of my mind all night. "I don't know," I admitted, rubbing my temples. Part of me wants to see her face real consequences. The other part, she's still my sister. The sister who stole nearly 100 grand from you and sabotaged your financial life for 7 years, Maya gently reminded me. "Yeah, that one." I sighed. What would happen? Realistically. Maya switched into professional mode. Given the amount and the duration, we're talking multiple felonies. Identity theft, grand larceny, possibly wire fraud. Best case for her, she gets a lenient judge and gets probation, a huge restitution order, and a permanent criminal record that will make it impossible for her to work in PR or any field requiring a background check. Worst case, she could face actual jail time. The image of Sophie in a prison uniform, as satisfying as it might be in a fleeting moment of anger, made my stomach clench. And if I don't press charges? Then legally, she gets away with it, Maya said bluntly. You can still go through the process of disputing the debts with the credit bureaus and lenders, but it's 1,000 times harder without an official police report. They're more likely to assume it's a family dispute you're trying to walk away from. And, she added, her voice dropping slightly, she might do it again. To someone else. That was a chilling thought. If Sophie was capable of this level of deception with her own family, what would she be willing to do to a stranger? Grandma said she's making a plan for her to return everything, I said. Does that change anything? Legally? Not a bit. The crimes were committed. But as a practical matter, it could influence a prosecutor or a judge during sentencing. It shows an attempt to make things right, even if it's coerced. Maya paused. And what does return everything even mean? The money's gone. She spent it. I think Grandma is going to pay me back, I said, the realization settling heavily. She feels responsible. She created the environment that let this happen. We talked for another hour. Maya advised me to immediately freeze my credit with all 3 bureaus, change every password I had, and start drafting dispute letters, using the evidence in the folder. She confirmed she would be there with me at Grandma's in the morning. After we hung up, I sat in the pre-dawn stillness of my kitchen, the city lights beginning to pale. The raw hurt was still there, a deep, resonant ache. But something else was solidifying alongside it, a cold, quiet determination. This wasn't just about being a victim anymore. This was about taking back control. I spent the next 2 hours methodically following Maya's advice. As I worked, more messages came in, this time from extended family, who had clearly gotten the gossip-laced version of events. A cousin I hadn't seen in years texted, "Heard you're trying to get Sophie thrown in jail." Family is family, Clara. My uncle's brother-in-law emailed, "These things are best kept in the family." Bringing in lawyers just makes things messy. The messages stung, but they also clarified my resolve. The family's priority was not my well-being, it was the preservation of the status quo. They wanted me to quietly accept an apology, smooth things over, and absorb the damage so that holiday dinners wouldn't be awkward. Around 5 a.m., my body finally gave out. I gathered the documents, slid them back into the folder, and fell into bed, my mind still racing. I knew, with a certainty that was both terrifying and liberating, that the decisions I made tomorrow would irrevocably change my relationship with my family. The Clara who had spent her life trying to be good enough, quiet enough, and worthy enough was gone. In her place was someone who was just beginning to understand that her own well-being was worth fighting for. Maya picked me up at 9:30 the next morning. She was dressed in a sharp, dark pantsuit, her no-nonsense lawyer uniform. I, on the other hand, felt like a ghost, having managed only a few hours of turbulent sleep. I was wearing jeans and my oldest, softest sweater, a subconscious need for comfort. The manila folder sat on my lap like a lead weight. "You look like hell, Clara," Maya said, her version of a loving greeting. "You're a ray of sunshine," I retorted, but without any real heat. "Sorry," she said, softening. "Just worried." "Did you make any decisions?" "I've decided not to decide anything until I hear what they have to say," I said. "But I'm not going to be railroaded into forgiving and forgetting. Not this time." "Good," she said, pulling away from the curb. "That's the right play. Stay noncommittal. Listen. Let them make their offer. The power is all on your side of the table right now." The drive to Grandma's house felt different. The familiar streets of Cedar Ridge, the tall pines dripping with morning mist, seemed to belong to a life I no longer lived. When we arrived, the house looked somber, the windows like vacant eyes. In the driveway were my parents' car, Sophie's new Subaru, and a sleek black sedan I didn't recognize. On the door was a discreet, gold leaf logo, Sterling Financial Advisory Group. "Grandma brought in the big guns," Maya murmured as we walked up the stone path. The door opened before we could knock. Eleanor stood there, looking as tired as I felt, but her spine was rigid. "You brought Maya," she stated. It wasn't a question. "She's here as my cousin," I said, though we both knew it was a necessary fiction. "Of course," Eleanor said, her eyes meeting Maya's with a flicker of respect. "Everyone is in the dining room." "Everyone." I felt a jolt of panic. "Grandma, I'm not ready for an ambush." "Not everyone," she clarified. "Your parents. Sophie. And Mr. Sterling, my financial advisor. He is here to mediate." The dining room, usually the scene of boisterous holiday meals, had been transformed into a boardroom. The long table was covered in neat stacks of documents, laptops, and calculators. My parents sat together on one side, their faces drawn and pale. Sophie was at the far end, staring down at her hands, a crumpled tissue clutched in one of them. Across from my parents sat a man in his 50s, dressed in an impeccably tailored suit. He rose as we entered. "Miss Hayes," he said, his voice calm and professional as he extended a hand. "I'm Arthur Sterling. Your grandmother has engaged me to help facilitate a resolution." I shook his hand, my own feelings small and cold. I took a seat, placing the heavy folder squarely in front of me. Maya sat beside me, her quiet presence a fortress at my back. "Before we start," I said, my voice clearer and stronger than I expected. I made a point of looking at each person at the table. "I want to state for the record that I have not made a decision about filing a police report. I am here to listen, but I am not agreeing to any course of action today." My mother flinched. My father laid a comforting hand on her arm. Sophie didn't look up. Grandma gave a curt, decisive nod. "Understood. Mr. Sterling, please proceed." The advisor opened a leather-bound portfolio. "Based on the extensive documentation provided by your grandmother and our firm's analysis overnight, we have confirmed a total of $92,457 in fraudulent debt and misappropriated funds over a 7-year period." He slid a bound document across the table to me. "This is a proposed agreement of restitution. In it, your sister, Sophie, formally acknowledges the full debt and the criminal actions taken to acquire it." I opened the document, Maya leaning in to read over my shoulder. It was comprehensive. It detailed a 10-year repayment plan, with a non-negotiable monthly payment of $770 to be automatically transferred to a new, secure account in my name. It stipulated that Sophie would immediately surrender the new Subaru. It would be sold by Mr. Sterling's firm, with all proceeds applied directly to the principal of the debt. Most critically, the final pages contained a full, detailed confession, signed by Sophie and notarized, outlining every fraudulent account, every forged signature, every stolen dollar. This is thorough, Maya commented, clearly impressed. There is more, Grandma said. She pushed another document toward me. I recognized it as a property deed. My breath hitched. Grandma, what is this? I am transferring ownership of the rental cottage on Whidbey Island to you, effective immediately, she stated, her voice firm. The property is mortgage-free and generates a steady income of approximately $1,600 a month. Its current market value is just over $400,000. The room was utterly silent. I stared at her, stunned. I can't accept that. It's too much. You can, and you will, she said, her gaze unwavering. This is not about balancing a ledger, Clara. This is about acknowledging a fundamental failure on my part. I fostered an environment of inequality. I mistook your independence for a lack of need, and I mistook Sophie's neediness for simple youthful struggle. I was wrong. The consequences of that error are mine to bear. Tears burned at the back of my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. This was a negotiation, not a family therapy session. And Sophie? I asked, finally turning my full attention to my sister. What do you have to say? She finally looked up, her face blotchy and swollen. I'm sorry, she whispered, the words barely audible. I know sorry isn't enough. I know it means nothing right now. But I am. I signed everything. The confession, the repayment plan. I'll give back the car. I'm moving home. I'll do whatever you want. What I want, I said, my voice low and steady, is to understand how you could watch me struggle for 7 years. Watch me work myself to exhaustion, knowing you were the cause of so much of it, and not say a word. You're only sorry because you got caught. Clara, my mother pleaded. She's your sister. Mom, not now, I said, cutting her off with a sharpness that surprised us both. This is not about sisterhood. This is about a pattern of criminal behavior. Your mother is right that Sophie is your sister, Grandma interjected, her voice cutting through the tension. But you are right that this is not a simple family squabble. That is why I insisted on the confession. The choice to use it, to go to the authorities, remains entirely yours, Clara. This agreement does not change that. I looked at Mr. Sterling. If I sign this and later decide to file a report, what happens to this agreement? It remains in full force, he replied smoothly. In a legal proceeding, it would be presented as evidence of remorse and an attempt at restitution, which could positively influence sentencing. But it in no way grants her immunity from prosecution. I looked back at Sophie. Do you understand that? That even if I agree to this, I could still turn that confession over to the police tomorrow. She nodded, a fresh wave of tears spilling down her cheeks. Yes, Maya explained that to me last night. I shot a surprised look at my cousin, who gave me a tiny, almost imperceptible shrug. Grandma called me at midnight. I made sure the document protected you, no matter what you decide. For the next hour, we dissected the agreement. Mr. Sterling explained the process for credit restoration, which would be expedited by Sophie's confession. Grandma detailed the immediate transfer of the cottage, handing me a folder with all the relevant paperwork and contact information for the current tenants. My parents remained mostly quiet, their expressions a mixture of shame and sorrow. Through it all, I was calm, analytical, and detached. I asked about tax implications, property management, and the legal enforcement of the repayment plan. But inside, a storm of emotions was raging, the deep wound of betrayal, the startling vindication of the truth finally being aired, and a strange, new feeling of empowerment. For the first time, I was not the quiet one, waiting for my turn. I was the one setting the terms. As Mr. Sterling packed his briefcase, Sophie spoke again, her voice still fragile. Clara, I know you hate me. You have every reason to. But I hope one day you won't. I'm going to get help. I've already made an appointment with a therapist. I have to figure out why I did what I did. I studied my sister, the expensive haircut, the delicate jewelry, all of it financed by my stolen future. I don't hate you, Sophie, I said, and it was the truth. But I don't know you. And I don't trust you. And I don't know if I ever will again. As Maya and I were leaving, Grandma Eleanor pulled me aside in the entryway. I meant what I said, Clara, she said, her voice uncharacteristically humble. I saw in Sophie a reflection of my own restless youth, and I indulged it. I saw in you a reflection of your grandfather, steady, reliable, and strong, and I took it for granted. I mistook your strength for not needing help. It's a lonely reward for being responsible, I said quietly. She nodded, her eyes filled with a profound, painful regret. It is. I can't undo the years of damage. But I can, and I will, spend the rest of my life trying to make it right. Driving away from the house, Maya glanced over at me. So, the million-dollar question. What are you going to do? I looked out the window at the passing blur of green. I thought of Sophie's face, a mixture of fear and, for the first time, a flicker of genuine shame. I thought of the cottage, the restitution, the confession sitting in the folder on my lap. I don't know yet, I said honestly. But for the first time in my life, I feel like I'm the one in the driver's seat. And that's a start. A month later, I stood in my apartment's parking lot, the keys to a modest, 3-year-old Toyota Camry feeling solid and real in my hand. It was silver, practical, and utterly, completely mine. I'd bought it 2 days earlier with the first 2 months of rental income from the cottage on Whidbey Island, a transaction that had felt both surreal and deeply grounding. The past 4 weeks had been a whirlwind of administrative tasks that amounted to a complete restructuring of my life. The cottage was officially in my name. The credit bureaus, armed with Sophie's notarized confession, had scrubbed the fraudulent accounts from my history, and my credit score was already beginning to rebound. I had a new bank, new passwords, and a new, unshakable habit of checking my accounts daily. But the most significant changes weren't on paper. They were internal. The door to my building opened, and Maya appeared, holding a box from my favorite local bakery. She'd been my constant, helping me with paperwork and talking me off the ledge when the pressure from a few well-meaning but misguided family members became too much. Ready for the inaugural voyage, she asked with a grin, nodding at my new car. I think so, I said, unlocking the doors. It still feels strange. Strange good, I hope. Strange good, I confirmed. We were on our way to Grandma's house for Sunday dinner, the first time the immediate family would be together since that awful meeting. I had kept my distance, needing space to process. I'd made my decision about the police report. I would not file one for now. The restitution agreement was my justice, and the confession was my insurance. I had also made it clear that while I wasn't seeking retribution, forgiveness was not yet on the table. Trust, I had explained to my mother in a difficult phone call, was a fragile thing, and once shattered, it couldn't be glued back together in a matter of weeks. Sophie, according to my parents, was complying with all the terms. She had sold the Subaru, moved into her old bedroom at home, and was attending therapy twice a week. The first of her 120 monthly payments had appeared in my new bank account on the first of the month, exactly as scheduled. Nervous? Maya asked as we merged onto the highway. A little, I admitted. I haven't seen Sophie face to face since that day. You know, Maya said gently, no one would think less of you if you decided to keep her at arm's length forever. I watched the familiar landscape of pine and sea flash by. I don't think I want that. There were good years before the bad ones. But I'm not willing to pretend the bad ones didn't happen just to make Sunday dinner less awkward. That's the healthiest attitude I've ever heard in our entire family, Maya said with a dry laugh. The house looked more welcoming this time. The garden was in its full summer glory, and someone had repainted the porch railings. Grandma Eleanor met us at the door, her smile genuine when she saw the pastry box. You read my mind, she said, ushering us in. She paused and studied me, her gaze sharp. You look different, Clara. New car, I offered. It's not the car, she said, shaking her head. It's your posture. You seem taller. She was right. In setting boundaries, in advocating for myself, in refusing to be a passive recipient of my family's drama, I had found a new way of carrying myself. The weight I'd been carrying for years wasn't just financial debt, it was the invisible burden of trying to be worthy. Shedding it had straightened my spine. The gathering was small and subdued. Sophie was there, dressed in simple jeans and a t-shirt, a stark contrast to her usual polished look. She looked up when I came in, her eyes wide and uncertain. "Hi, Clara," she said quietly. "Hi, Sophie," I replied, taking a seat across the living room from her, creating a deliberate, necessary space between us. Dinner was stilted at first, a careful dance around the enormous elephant in the room. But slowly, a new, more careful dynamic began to emerge. When my father started to talk over my mother, Grandma gently but firmly cut him off. "Let your wife finish her story, David." When I mentioned a book I was reading, Sophie asked a thoughtful question about it, then actually listened to the answer. After dinner, Grandma brought out an old, dusty photo album. "I've been thinking a lot about the stories we tell ourselves," she said, opening it on the coffee table. Inside were faded black and white photos of a young Eleanor, looking startlingly like Sophie, standing next to a stern-faced woman. "This was my mother," she explained. "She was a difficult woman. She pitted her children against each other. She used money and affection as tools of control." She turned the page. "I spent my whole life trying not to be her. But we repeat the patterns we don't consciously break. I created a world where one of my granddaughters felt she deserved everything, and the other felt she deserved nothing. That is on me." She looked at Sophie, then at me. "Understanding the pattern doesn't excuse the choices made within it. Sophie, your actions were yours alone." Sophie nodded, her eyes filling with tears. "I know." She turned to me, her voice thick with an emotion that felt, for the first time, like genuine remorse. "I've been reading about what people go through. Victims of identity theft. I never thought about that part. The violation. The feeling of being unsafe in your own life. I just thought about the money." She took a shaky breath. "I'm so sorry I did that to you, Clara. I'm sorry I stole your peace of mind. It was the apology I hadn't known I needed to hear. Not for the money, but for the invisible, emotional theft." "Thank you for saying that," I said, and the words were not forced. Later, as Maya and I were leaving, Grandma pressed an envelope into my hand. "One last thing." Inside was not money, but a single ornate key. "It's to the cottage," she explained. "The tenants are wonderful, but I thought you should have your own key. To go whenever you want. To sit on the porch and watch the water. To have a place that is entirely, peacefully yours." Driving home in my new car with the key to my own private sanctuary in my pocket, a profound sense of calm settled over me. The road ahead was still long. Rebuilding trust with Sophie, if it ever happened, would be a journey of years, not months. But the foundation was different now. I had found my voice, and in using it, had discovered a strength I never knew I possessed. I had learned that true wealth isn't measured by a bank balance, but by the quiet confidence that comes from knowing your own worth and demanding, gently but firmly, that the world acknowledge it, too. Have you ever had to stand up to family members who took your kindness for granted? I would be honored to hear your stories and experiences in the comments below. This journey has taught me that speaking your truth, even when your voice shakes, is the first and most vital step toward healing. If this story resonated with you, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more reflections on life, family, and finding your strength. Remember, setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's an act of self-preservation, and it's essential for any healthy relationship. Thank you for listening, and may you always find the courage to be your own strongest advocate.